Well, hello, I'm Matt Cogswell. I'm being prompted over here by Stan. I haven't had my coffee yet this morning. Welcome to Guitar Talk. This is our all-around guitar guru, Stan. Camera on Stan. Camera back to me now. Stan, today you piqued my interest this morning. We came up with this morning. We thought we'd talk about Fender guitars.
Well, we're going to talk about the Fender Stratocaster, which is the custom super deluxe model that they really went nutso on. The concept was incredible. Gibson in 1954 came up with a few more Les Pauls. The Les Paul Custom comes to mind, and I guess Fender figured they should come up with a new model too, and this is what they came out with, and they drove the guitar world crazy fun.
All right, let me stop you there and ask you, what year is this particular guitar, and how has the body type changed since they came out?
Well, they've come out with different woods. They've come out with over time, which I'll get into. But this is a copy of, I'd say, a '57 Strat.
All right, now how does that differ? I mean, these are they're pretty close.
Oh yeah, no. The body was pretty much somewhat altered, but not by much, and it was by some dimensions. Like the older the body, if you notice, if we turn the guitar sideways, I have a little thicker spot here than you do on your body.
Yeah.
And yours is more early. They were very thin here, and as they developed, they got a little wider here. I think what would happen is people would chip them because they would come to too much of a point, and they'd ding them, and next thing you know, you had a paint chip. So they flattened out that surface a little bit.
I got to tell you, this one's comfortable. When I put the strap on, it lays right there.
Well,
I mean, it's
that's
nice.
what they were looking for. A few things. One, the Telecaster. They said, gee, back to Fender and the company would talk to professionals all the time. They would be inside their factory all the time, and they wanted a guitar to become the top of the line over the Telecaster, which was their first production model, and they wanted a hipper guitar.
And the Tele was very popular.
The Tele was very popular, which is how the Les Paul got started with Gibson through the Telecaster's popularity, and now he wanted to go and make people get even crazier. So, in a sequence of events, one. Went to a little bit different shape in the headstock, more towards an original Paul Bigsby, but if you look, it's a violin headstock.
Yeah, you do see that.
All right? So that was one of the things that I think Paul Bigsby saw too, laying in his 6-in-line gears, and Leo followed with the Telecaster. But now, if you Google Paul Bigsby guitars, you'll notice that the headstock is very similar. And just like the Telecaster, made it into a plank. All right, that's why the little string trees have to exist and stuff like that.
One of the features I like about this, and maybe it's just me, but I love the action on these.
Oh, well, the Telecaster has the action. The action is a dimension in the laws of physics, so you get it with every instrument. And if you don't get it, it's because something's wrong. Either you need to learn how to play, or the instrument's out of.
He always mentions that when I'm on.
Well, that's true. The only good sounding guitar is being played by the good guitarists.
But I like this neck. I've never been. Stan built this for me out of parts. This is a Frankenstein. It's very similar to that. The neck, I love this neck. There's just something about it. It's very comfortable to play, and the whole thing, the weight is perfect, and it just sits just right. It's my guitar.
Thing was neck heaviness. So they made an extension of the top horn and made it a double cutaway. And then players, there was a gentleman at the time named Bill Carson, who was a guitarist in the area, a professional. And he would take the guitars out and take them for a spin. And one day, figuring it was just a block of wood, he took his Telecaster and ground in this belly cut. And then they put in this arm cut. I don't know if that was Bill, but this was always considered the Carson guitar at the Fender factory. All these modifications were all from him. Leo.
Now, did he start out trying to make this ergonomic? Is the word I'm thinking of?
Well, they said it was
make
a
it
solid
easier.
block. Yeah, well, that's what
Yeah.
the players wanted. Let's make it more comfortable. Consider it's just a block of wood. Why don't we put these things in? So they did, and then Paul Bigsby had invented a device to bend strings, and Leo Fender going, gee, why should that be a custom shop order? Why don't I design one? And Leo wasn't as much of an inventor as he was an improver. He would take a design and improve on it. And what his systems became is probably the most sensitive of the string bending systems. A copy of this, or let's try to improve on this system, was Floyd Rose, which you may not have heard of, Matt, but other players, they're the ones with the locking over here. And there's a long story there for the locking part. Because
I like that you move the whole plate. I mean, if you use that, you could see as it comes through, this whole plate moves.
yes,
the whole
you
thing.
I don't know if you can hear that.
And you know what the other nice thing is about that? You can take it off.
Well,
Take it off. Some guys don't. I mean, you know, the surf music, I know that, you know, this was really wildly popular with the surf music.
well, in the surf music, just like in the Floyd Roses, most of the people want the system to float. In other words, go in both directions. But because of its sensitivity, when you bend strings, like after 1955, with the pedal steel, where you would bend one string and leave the other stationary, the system in floating position would flatten the string, because as you bent the strings, being a seesaw or like a scale, you can just touch it and it will move.
Right.
You know? So both Jimi Hendrix and then later on a young kid named Eddie Van Halen would put them right down to the body. So you can't pull back on the system at all, and you can only go forward on the system. And what they would do is they drop the system and then hit what they want and then pull up on, let go of it, and it would sound like they're pulling up on the system. And now with it touching the body, there's a little bit more sustain, and now the strings don't move when you do those pedal steel licks, which is why they
Sustain
designed,
meaning the tone rings longer.
when it would flatten in pitch. So this note would go.
Well, you're saying sustain.
Oh, I'm sorry. Flatten in pitch. So as you,
I got that part. Yeah.
This note would flatten in pitch because this thing was a seesaw. All right. So now this is staying steady for these pedal steel licks, which we designed these skinny strings for. Because when this was designed, light gauge, when this instrument was designed, it came with 12 gauge strings. That was light gauge strings at the time, like you get on an acoustic.
Like you get
that's why you needed a
You
bending
can get on a
system.
bass fiddle, for Christ's sake.
Well, they used to use tiny frets and things like that, so this would never. All right, so the contour body. All right, the automatic Paul Bigsby system, and then let's drive them crazy and put a middle pickup in, which I think inspired Gibson to come up with the ES5. Is an L5 size body from Gibson with 3 pickups on this big archtop body, and what it originally had was.
So what are the combinations that you have on that?
Well, originally they were trying to come up with the electronics, and they wanted the bridge position. So when you got there, the only thing you would need is a volume control. You wouldn't have to touch the tones. But the original values that they put in were 1 meg, which they had on the Telecaster. And when you went here, they realized you're going to need a tone. Well, now they would have to redesign it, because this was originally designed as master volume, tone for the neck pickup, and tone for the middle pickup. Now, a common modification, which this guitar became the most modifiable instrument ever. All right. So as it progressed, to sell the guitar and to customize it like hot rods, they started making custom finishes. All right, but the electronics were too bright. So as opposed to putting in another tone knob, they lowered the value of the tone knob, of the volume and tones from 1 million ohms or 1 meg to 250 K.
I don't know what you mean by the value. They lowered the value.
Each one of these, underneath this piece of plastic, is what they call a potentiometer. And each potentiometer has a value assigned to it as far as how much impedance it implies as it's sweeping. And what we're looking at in a potentiometer, although this is getting a little off the beaten track, we're looking at a wiper blade going down a horseshoe. All right.
Yeah. Well, the reason I asked is what it did to what came out of the amplifier. That's all I'm interested in.
What come out of the amplifier is the higher the value, okay, the more high-end treble would pass through.
Okay, I'm getting an idea now.
All right. So the lower you put, the less treble passes through. It filters out.
Okay.
All right. And to keep the design the same, they lowered the value to filter out more treble.
So more
because
crunchy?
they had too much treble.
So
here.
the sound was more crunchy?
No,
That's what I would call it.
No, it'd be bright.
Oh,
It'd be stinging.
More clear then.
Oh, extremely, like laser clear.
And then you see all these blues guys come along like Clapton, and they don't want that clear. They want crunch.
If you go back to our episode on the Telecaster, because Gibson shortened their scale length, they darkened their guitars. So in some rooms, they weren't bright enough. To make a treble boost would be bigger than this table to bring to the gig for certain rooms. So Leo Fender said, why do they keep on trying to put the glass half full? Why don't they fill the glass and pour off what they don't need? So to properly use a Telecaster with the proper controls, the 1 meg potentiometers loaded into a Telecaster, you must use the tone knobs, because you got to pour off what you don't need.
Right.
Otherwise, you leave them up all the way. The guitar is way, way, way too bright.
Would you call it shrill almost?
Shrill almost, yeah.
Shrill.
Yeah, oh yeah.
A word we heard a lot last week.
So they realized that the 1 megs weren't going to work if they wanted to keep this volume tone for the neck, tone for the middle. Now,
Right.
they modified it for 250K. So by late 1954, early 55, this was all 250K, but this was still just a 3-position switch. Neck, middle, and bridge. Now you heard a click in between because
Right.
this is a mod that became popular. So the first mod that became popular for a Stratocaster was the in-between positions of the neck and the middle and the bridge, offering that quacky kind of sound, that Mark Knopfler-ish, Eric Clapton, quackiness type of sound. So being the switches are the same, except that this one has 2 more notches than the 3-position switch. Otherwise, diagram-wise, they're exactly the same switch.
Okay, so you now have, instead of 3 options, you have 6 options.
No, I have 5.
Well, all right, go through them.
Neck and middle,
Right.
middle and bridge.
Okay, 5.
And then we could come up with more mods. Like you could put 2 humbuckers in there. Why don't you put your guitar down and pick up the one next to you? And in the 70s, we progressed into different body woods. And all the manufacturers, inclusive of Fender, have tried other bodies and have different issues where they actually use mahogany. In one case, this is koa, Hawaiian koa wood.
Oh, God, I didn't even know that. Look at that. That is gorgeous.
And the weight, how would you describe the weight on that guitar? Is it
It's perfect.
not too heavy, not too light?
You know what? It feels almost the same as mine does. Almost exact. Very nice. I like, look at now, you see, he's got a couple of humbuckers here.
Yeah.
He's got this, and you have how many positions here now?
3.
1, What's that?
That'd be a neck pickup,
Just
like your
this?
casino. Now it's both pickups, and now it's bridge pickup.
Okay.
Yep. And then you can pull up on those knobs. Wow.
Now, what does that do?
It turns that neck pickup into one of these pickups.
Oh, really? So
Yes.
it goes from a humbucker, what would they call that? A single
coil.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the humbucker is
Two single
wound
coils.
differently.
No, it's two single coils wound in opposite polarity and in reverse wind, reverse polarity. So it acts as a choke, and that's how it cancels the hum. But now, when they made it, it had more mid-range to it. So it didn't quite sound like a single coil. So what people would do is, there's a couple of ways of doing that kind of
So
thing.
you're talking about had more mid-range. It had more depth to it. Like when you hit it, it wasn't as clear. It had almost something behind it. That's the way I would think about it.
Mid-range stops the hollowness of sound. So if you eliminate mid-range, you start to get a hollowness because you're hearing the bass or you're hearing the treble, and you don't have that middle ground.
Yeah.
And the instrument is a mid-range instrument, so it has plenty of mid-range in it already, and now it added more mid-range, which when you overdrove would not only, it would actually overdrive faster because the more mid-range you contain, the more you step on the mid-range sensitivity.
It sounds to me like it would be richer. The sound would be richer.
The sound would be richer, yes.
Yeah.
But it didn't sound like a single coil, which sounded like more like an acoustic instrument. Sorry, that one may be out of
It's
tune.
out of tune, yeah. It's relaxed in the box.
It's relaxed in the box. So so at any rate, you would want to have the option of going back. On the same token, if I take two single coils and put them in reverse wind, reverse polarity, and then wire them in series, like the two coils on a humbucker are wired,
Right.
I can create humbuckers, which is what we're doing here. When I pull up on this switch, these two come on in this position in humbucker. So now I have a humbucker, a redundancy of the neck pickup, all three pickups in parallel, in other words, just on, where all the hots are all going to the same spot.
That would seem to me like a rhythm setting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is the two outside pickups, which you never seem to get on a Stratocaster.
That's unusual.
And then these two in humbucker.
Very interesting.
It's kind of like reverse of what, as opposed to coil tapping and creating single coils, we took single coils and created humbuckers. So my partner and I decided one day that, when it came to loads of pickups on a guitar, so in that case, that's a humbucker load. I'd have to do all kinds of routing and manipulations to make it a single coil load. So I find the two best humbuckers and then live with the coil taps that I could get. As opposed to a Stratocaster, when you put the humbucker in the bridge, you never seem to get that single coil sound back, even though you're coil tapping the humbucker, because this is a bigger single coil. And you need that fatness of the bigger single coil in the bridge position because it's a very weak position on guitars. So, excuse me, I need to get a sip of something here.
Okay, Senator Rubio.
Ah.
You can continue now.
So we said, why don't we get the best Strat sound and then pull up and live with whatever humbucker we get in the bridge area. And that's why we did that and came up with that scenario.
Well, you could see, especially in the 60s, when these guys started, I would say, screwing around with just what you're talking about.
Well, it's actually more the 70s that it really started to get
Yeah, but
to
late
get crazy.
60s, that's what I mean. Late 60s, like Cream messing around with their sound, Led Zeppelin, That's what I hear anyway.
Well, Jimmy Page being a producer, he actually being a telly player, when he got the Les Paul, he wanted it to get telly sounds off of it. So he did a lot of he may have been one of the first to ask a tech to start doing manipulations on the pickups because his Les Paul, there's actually a couple of switching positions that you can actually shut off the guitar by accident.
I meant to do that. I meant to do that.
It's when you reverse phase, you swap coils, and now running them in series, all of a sudden that would ground out the coil that you shut off. So now that would ground out the whole thing.
In front of 25,000 screaming.
Oh, he would know better. But the position that usually gives him the most problems is where he pulls. There's like a bunch of little toggle switches hidden underneath his pick guard on the Les Paul, because you have a gap, like on your Casino, there's a gap between you, and they loaded. Whereas nowadays they do things like this. If you can see this, this is a push-pull pot where you, or they have what they call a push-push pot where you push down and then. But I don't like them as much because I don't know where they are. I could bump it, and next thing you know, and I'm looking on a dark stage.
I see Knopfler do it. I see Knopfler hit something down here and then go like this with his little finger, and you can't even see him doing it.
Well, that's actually a volume sweep.
That's pretty cool, I think.
Well, again, these guitars, both the Telecaster and the Stratocaster, were designed with professionals in the building going, oh, don't put it way over there. We want to get to it, you know. So
again, ergonomics almost.
Yeah,
I mean, just what they're comfortable with. I want to do this. I want to be able to do this. You know, the pulling up of I want to get into crunch mode. I want to get out of it.
Well, the Fenders were very player, manufacturer,
player friendly,
and they listened to each other. Where Gibson would listen and then go back and redesign whatever they wanted to do. So most of the Les Paul was designed off of cosmetics. They made mistakes with the Les Paul, the original model, which was in when I talked about it on the Les Paul show that we did a while back.
All right, let me ask you a question, Stan.
Yep.
What is the difference between that with the pickled finish over there and what we're holding? What makes that unique?
Okay, in the late 50s, and this is actually a mongrel. This is a late 50s, early 60s neck.
Would you call that a Frankenstein?
It is. The neck was broken, and I repaired it. Might be hard to see.
I think you showed me you did like what I used to call a Jonah in a floor. We put a plug in and then grind it off.
No, this was
wasn't
just
a plug.
No, not in this one.
Because I've seen you do. I've seen you route out.
We've done Les Pauls that way. This I just kind of tried to mask the color as much as I could. This is the first rendition of a rosewood board, and if you can see, it's thicker here. And as it goes down to the 21st fret, it gets thinner.
Yeah.
Leo Fender was having a hard time in the late 50s putting rosewood on rosewood fretboards onto Stratocaster necks.
Why?
He was just having a hard time keeping them glued, and one would shrink faster than the other. He called Martin, and he came up with this design, but then later on changed the design to a little wafer of a thing. We were talking about Strat necks and going to a rosewood board. I was watching one of the shows on YouTube with this one tech that, what 57 Strat, he's calling a 57, you know, late 50s, all of them had pretty much rosewood boards. So how could, you'd have to custom order it to be a 1960 or 61 maple neck at that point.
It's real quickly now, Stan. We got like 4 minutes left.
No, and I want to tell you people, forget about the numbers on the neck, forget about the numbers on the body. When you're buying a vintage guitar, if the person says it's all original, take off the pick guard, and if the pots look new, then it's not all original. And that's a common trick that they do. They'll replace the pots so you can't tell what year it was made, because the pots codes actually are accurate to the date of when they were made. So if you're wondering what year your guitar was made and they say the pots are original, you should be able to look up the codes on the pots. There's a few different...
Don't go by the neck.
Don't go by the neck, don't go by the body. The neck was made either previous or post body. They would store them and then bring them together when they needed to.
Okay, I think, how many of these are rebuilt with parts or put together with parts that
Well,
weren't original to them. I think every one of them,
Here's
right?
one of the ways that they would put serial numbers on the guitar,
Yeah.
is on the neck plate. So if I take another neck plate, I can have another year.
There you go.
Now this neck plate works with this neck. It's about 61. So that neck plate, but these pickups are actual Fender pickups, but they're 1965. And the bridge is more a little later, more 66, 67, but was still in the box. So I assembled late 50s, early 60s Strat with again, Frankenstein. The only thing that's not old enough would be the gears, but I have the original gears for this neck.
To me, okay,
and this body.
Frankenstein is almost a misnomer to me because it implies that it's not, you know, the whole isn't as good as the parts put together. These are just as good as any originals I've played. I love them.
I know.
I absolutely love them.
It's just a piece of wood. It's a
Stan, help
well-designed.
me.
It's a
Stan.
well-designed instrument, and it's hard to. It's a simple, well-designed instrument that, in its simplicity, you can't screw it up.
Yep.
Although I've seen some people do it.
But this is like one of the greatest things. I'm going to tear up here that Stan's ever done for me is make this for me. This is a wonderful guitar. Plays well. I love the pickups in it, and it's never more than 3 feet from my side, so I appreciate that, Stan.
Not a problem.
It's like my baby, like my dogs. Anyway, we're going to wrap it up now. As usual, we have so much to talk about and so little time on this. I'd love to do these again and maybe bring a couple more examples of, you know, and talk more about making a quality product out of quality parts. That would be, I think, a good discussion for a whole episode, basically.
Yep, we could do that.
I mean, you know, you could talk about, you know, you got these from another guitar, you got a neck from another one. This was ordered, I had to finish it, and I liked it in natural. It's just, and then I found some old nitrocellulose in a buddy of mine's place. He paints cars, and I got it, and we'll talk about that at another time too.
There we go. All right, so I guess, well, we have a minute left.
Yeah.
What can we talk about in a minute?
Nothing. Nothing in depth. But like I said, to wrap it up, and I think I already did say that, but I'll say it again. These, you can't go wrong with these. You just can't. Like Stan said, the simplistic in design. They're easy to fix.
Yep. And you can buy other necks for them from other companies. There's a lot of people making copy parts for these things. There's a couple of really good companies out here in the States. And then there's a bunch of Japanese companies that are really nice too.
Something to think about, ladies and gentlemen. All right. Well, thank you for watching, and we hope to see you again next week. We're going to try and go more in depth on this, I think. I would like to anyway.
Good night, Matt.
Good night. Good night, Stan. And good night, America.